Are you ready for a war?
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. We are in the final stretch of the current Grand Arena Championship, which means that we're in the final group. I'm at 9-0 right now, which means that I have an excellent shot at making Kyber for the third time in a row, which is going to be a really cool feat. I'm really excited about that. And my match is against the Bob of Bobs. I don't really know what the difference is. I wonder if my opponent's name is Robert. It doesn't really matter, I guess. Well, to him it probably matters. I personally don't care. Anyways, we're at 9-0 right now. We typically need to be at 10-0. We need to get 10 wins out of the 12 in Grand Arena to be able to get into Kyber. And so if I can get one more win, I'll be good to go. Looking at my opponent's stats, they didn't really necessarily outdo me on a whole lot of things. They did have 400,000 more GP than I did, which isn't great, obviously, but they don't use total GP for matches anymore, so that doesn't necessarily matter. My opponent had a lot more Gear 12 than I did, and even more Gear 13 than I did as well, which is something I've been really focused on, so they have quite a few for this level. Otherwise, looking at their win record and everything, this match was going to be winnable, but my opponent was clearly good if they were already in Erodium at this point. They had a lot of undersized wins and defenses, and so I didn't want to take that lightly at all. And moving into this match, looking at the board, my opponent really stacked their front zone. And by zone, I mean zones, as in plural. Both of them are stacked. The first zone had Darth Revan and Bastila without Malak, so who knows what squad he was going to be hiding in. And General Skywalker with high relic clones. Well, mid relic clones, I should say. Luckily, this General Skywalker was only 5 stars, though, so probably beatable. In the other zone, we have all Gear 13 Nightsisters without really high relic levels. And then a General Grievous squad with all of his droids and everything, and Grievous was at Relic 7, so I need to be careful about that. All of these squads are all teams that I'm used to facing in Grand Arena. They're pretty standard, but they're still pretty loaded front zones, and you don't know what's in the back zones, and you kind of want to be able to take out these squads with the lowest squad possible, but the reality was I don't really have many squads available that could beat all of these teams, so I was pretty much locked in, which is kind of a blessing. Like, you want to be able to have easy choices, and this was definitely one of them. My first match I wanted to do was General Grievous, just because this was a squad that I knew I was going to be able to beat with a specific team composition, and I wanted to just knock it out. Like, this was probably the easiest choice out of all of them. And you can see here I have Bastila as the lead, just because with all of the bonus protection, she gives a ton of not only protection, but she also gives a huge boost to tenacity up, which is big because the General Grievous squad really relies on debuffs to be able to operate and get a lot of turn meter, and so if you can deny them that, then that's really going to help. At the start of the match, Revan is almost always the first one to go, and he does his AoE and hands turn meter off to Hoda, which is Hermit Yoda, and Hermit Yoda then does Master's Training to Grandmaster Yoda. Grandmaster Yoda does a basic and gains enough turn meter to go next. Then he does another AoE, and the AoE, if the Revan AoE didn't do it, then hopefully the Grandmaster Yoda AoE does do it. It triggers B2's ability to take a turn. He takes a turn, does his AoE, negates all of our protection, or rather our foresight, and after that he's visible, he's not stealthed anymore, and Revan gets his turn again, and he marks B2 and we take him out. We always want to take B2 out first, just because he does a lot of damage in terms of getting rid of our buffs, and Jedi really rely on those buffs. Once we take him out, then we kind of want to just dance around and put damage on all the other droids before Grievous until Revan gets his turn and is able to mark Grievous. Once Grievous is marked, then of course you want to just concentrate everything you're on him. You're kind of forced to, in fact. And so you're just doing all the damage. Once you can take him out, which takes a while because he has a huge health pool. And, he even has a lot of protection, actually, even though you don't really want to focus on that stat for Grievous when you're modding him. Once you take him out, then the rest of the droids are relatively easy to deal with. And you can see here I was able to take out Grievous fairly quickly. One thing I did want to note is that my opponent made kind of a mistake in gearing their Magna droid first. I would always go with B2 first, because B2 is a pain. You always have to kill him. If Magna Guard gets geared, it's actually kind of a blessing. I like being able to hit him at gear 13 and know that I'm not really going to kill another character until I'm able to mark Grievous again. And so some advice I would give you is, if you're looking to gear your droid team, eventually get Magna Guard up to gear 13. He's good there. But you want to get B2 up first, just because you kill B2 and then you're just kind of stuck behind Magna Guard, and usually you can just kill him if he's gear 12. But if he's gear 13, you can't kill him, and because you're not killing him, then you're not giving General Grievous extra turn. And that's huge in that battle. Giving Grievous extra turns is huge. I debated for a while here on the Nightsisters team, and they all have relics, and my opponent had some really fast mods on all of his characters. And at first I was like, well, I could still probably take him with troopers. I think troopers are strong enough. But after I looked at all of my opponent's speeds, he actually had a faster spirit than my Stark would have been. They were one speed faster than my Stark, and so I decided to take my Padme team, and you can see it's a little bit different than my original team. I'm taking Shaak Ti here in exchange for Ahsoka, and they actually have pretty similar kits. The only difference is Ahsoka had the assist on a special on any character who used a special on the team, and Shaak Ti doesn't have that. However, Shaak Ti does have something that's really vital, and that is a Dispel on basic, and that's the same thing that Ahsoka has, and that's one of the reasons why this team is so good at being able to counter Nightsisters, because you have the character hit zombie and it dispels zombie without having to kill her all the way, and once you're able to take out zombie's taunt, then you can focus on other Nightsisters for a little bit until Nightsister zombie regains her taunt. And so Shaak Ti is a pretty good addition to this team. Obviously Ahsoka is with my General Skywalker on defense. Maybe it wasn't obvious, so it's obvious to me because I played it and I'm the one who said it. But anyways, we're just trying to take time to take out zombie. It just takes a while. Every once in a while you'll hit zombie, and then immediately after she'll take a turn, just because her speed is so much faster right now than it usually is. But that kind of gives you an opportunity to build up your courage on all the different members. Now, I say that even as I don't have any courage at all on any of these characters. Personally, I have a lot of courage, but on these characters, I don't. Anyways, we're able to finally get some good damage on Nightsisters. I did manage to take out a couple Nightsisters kind of early on, and of course zombie resurrected them or revived them or whatever you want to call it, which is fine. That's how it works. But after you kind of stand behind zombie for a while, she just keeps taunting and taunting. It can get frustrating, but you just bide your time, and eventually there's an opening. There inevitably is. You build up enough courage, or you build up enough something, and you're able to do it. So 57 banners, pretty good result. Anywhere between 55 and 60 is probably fine for this match, especially because they're fully relict, or at least they're all relict Nightsisters. They don't have full relics. The back zone was a Nute squad with Watt and a Bosk team with a really fast Bosk. But before I gave those curs the drubbing they deserved, I needed to focus on the next zone, the other front zone, because I needed to make sure I could beat either of these teams. And I was debating. Usually I just take out the Darth Revan team first because that's the most challenging one. But this one presented a really interesting question. Could I take out a Darth Revan team without using my own Malak? The truth is, I don't really have any recollection of what the Darth Revan mirror match is like without having Malak as part of it. But after a while of thinking about it, my Darth Revan and my Bastila are both faster than my opponents, and so that wasn't really going to be an issue in terms of going first. And so I decided to just run the mirror match and see what happened. My opponent did have Marauder, and his Marauder was significantly faster. And one thing I should note is my opponent did have tremendous mods, like throughout the entire match. Like that was the other thing that my opponent beat me on, was mods. And so moving into this match, I was just trying to mitigate damage, and obviously I failed to some degree. 49 banners is not wonderful for any attack. That's almost as bad as using Jawas on Geos, but I did get the job done, and I did preserve Malak for use in a later zone. And now the General Skywalker fight is obviously tricky. He's the newest character, he's the newest meta character, and after doing some research, and soul searching and all kinds of searches, Google searches, everything. If you've seen a couple videos prior, I was able to face a Gear 12 General Anakin, which is really tough. It's considerably harder than a Gear 11 General Skywalker. And you can see how fast he was toppled. I decided to bring Captain Han Solo in there just because he has a revive, and he had higher health than Commander Luke, so he wasn't going to be getting me in much trouble in terms of putting guard on the wrong character. And so you can see I was able to topple General Skywalker fairly easily. He was not necessarily that hard to beat. I was a little disappointed in how fast his team melted, actually. Not disappointed in terms of like I wanted to lose or something, but you always hope that these characters who are supposed to be transcendent meta characters are going to actually do something. And even though my opponent had modded their character for protection and had a huge amount of protection on there, I just melted through that. It was relatively easy. And so I was able to take them out with 53 banners. 53, I don't know if that's the norm or what. They took out my Captain Han pretty quick, so I guess we'll just continue to move on. After the first two zones were cleared, I had a Halloween thing with the kids, and so I needed to do that, and I was able to pay a little bit of attention to my opponent's attacks, though, while we were getting ready for that. And they came relatively early, which I really appreciated, and they did a one-shot on my Nightsisters team for 60 banners, and that was not a great start. But then they tripped up a little bit on my new, to me, Bosk team with Watt on it. They were able to eventually take out the Bosk team, of course, with the second attack. And then it was a pretty interesting thing to watch my opponent attack this last squad. Now, I put the Wampa in actually kind of by mistake. I meant to put Droidica in there, but I think that maybe that ended up being a really fortunate mistake on my end. I was able to get a couple defenses with the Nute team and then a third one, and my opponent kept just losing squads. I have no idea what they used, and they didn't tell me. They wouldn't tell me. And so it ticked all the way up to 4 defenses there until they finally got taken out. I hadn't expected the squad to be so good. I won't lie, I felt a little bit like Neo in the Matrix. After that, after a while, my opponent did clear my General Skywalker team, probably with Commander Luke as well, though who knows. And my General Grievous team did get a defense. Grievous has BB-8 with him, though, so I was excited to see that actually pay off. Alright, let's take a look at the last 4 teams and what I had available to be able to counter. You can see the squads in red are the ones that I don't have anymore that I used. The squads in green are the teams that I want to avoid using if possible, but they are available. And in certain circumstances, maybe I'll use them instead of the other options that are above them. But I had Traya, Troopers, Jedi Training Ray without BB-8 because BB-8 was with General Grievous on defense, and then my First Order team. And my opponent had a really fast Jango Bounty Hunter team, but that was not really a problem. My Imperial troopers ended up being faster than any of the other bounty hunters, and so that was a pretty obvious choice. After that, the Nute and Wat team, the only option I really had available to be able to counter that was my Traya team, and I did have Malak available for it, and so I was wondering where my opponent, like what he had done with their Malak. Maybe he tried to solo one of my teams with Malak or something on offense, I don't really know. But it didn't matter to me, I didn't have to defeat him, so whatever. After that, my opponent had a First Order team with Zeta Barriss, and I originally was wondering, like, maybe my Phoenix could be able to beat that. Like, I think maybe I could have, and I truly don't know. The only time I've ever tried that counter, I've lost, and so I decided instead I just used my own First Order team, and that left the Qi'ra team, which was essentially just a timeout team. It had Stormtrooper Han, Captain Han for revives, Vander Chewbacca for other revives, and L3. With Qi'ra as lead, and it's a timeout team, and it can be really frustrating if you don't have the right tools, and Jedi Training Ray absolutely does have the right tools, even without BB-8, and so I knew that was probably going to be my best option with that team. It's pretty far diminished. It's hard to go without BB-8, but I'm going to learn, and eventually I'm going to gear up Holdo, which I've heard is a really good addition to that team. But anyways, let's see how my plan worked. So I wanted to get rid of the bounty hunters first because that could cause probably the biggest roadblock to my being able to win. And I decided instead of just jumping into it, I wanted to double check to see if Jango's speed was faster than Bossk or something like that. Some people do that to try to trick you. And whereas their Jango was pretty quick, he wasn't as fast as Bossk, and so I was able to select my bounty hunters, or my Imperial troopers, just because Colonel Stark is up to 340 speed, and so I can counter a lot of these teams. So first you want to pick the guy who has the lowest hit points, and that is definitely Boba in this case. I threw my grenade, which should have reduced cooldowns, but it missed on Bossk, and I was initially just really scared. Like, that's the only thing that you absolutely need to happen is, well, first you need to be able to be faster, but after that you need that grenade to hit Bossk, because then Bossk can't taunt even though he gets a turn. So he taunted, and I was really afraid, but then I found out that I could just gun him down anyways with the troopers, and so it wasn't as big of a factor as I had thought. But initially I was terrified. Like, I was pretty sure I was just going to lose, and I just started jamming buttons, and that approach absolutely worked. And so the bounty hunter team with all the really high crazy speeds on it was taken out with 60 banners, and the next one I wanted to be able to take out was this Qi'ra team, because if this didn't work, then there was a possibility I could probably cobble something together, but I needed to know that. Like, I just don't have any experience with this team yet, frankly, and I wanted to see if this was going to work. If it didn't work, though, I needed to see what my options were and reevaluate. And so I marched in. I took Scavenger Ray because she has a huge amount of damage, and I'm not used to Qi'ra going that soon. Usually I get a whole bunch of turns before the enemy team gets to go, but in this case, you just adapt and move on, and you want to take out Vander Chewbacca first, and then as quick as possible you want to take out Captain Han, because Captain Han is just going to revive Vander, and then once Vander gets back, if Stormtrooper Han is able to taunt or do something, then they'll regain turn meter, they'll regain a lot of their protection, and the whole situation will just be really irritating. And that's why this team is so good as a timeout team, is because of all the different layers of disruption available. And even if you do succeed at doing something good, you're not able to necessarily get anything going, because then Vander revives or Captain Han revives, something like that. And so In this case, it wasn't really a factor. I was able to take everyone out in the order that I needed to, and I don't know if that was because of speeds or because my opponent hadn't put a lot of gear on this team past gear 12, but 59 banners is an excellent result considering I didn't have BB-8 to help, and I actually don't know if I would have gotten a better score with BB-8. Maybe I could have gotten a 60, but one way or another, 59 was very acceptable, especially considering the fact that my opponent had dropped the ball on a few of his attacks, and so I wanted to next take out this First Order team with Barriss, just because I needed to be able to see what my options were once again if I was to fail. And this is kind of a match that can go south pretty quick because First Order is such a turn meter driven team that if they start getting some momentum and they stun the right people and they start doing some things that are not necessarily awesome, things can go south pretty quick. And then so I needed to be able to kind of gauge what my options were after this match. I was pretty confident going in, though. I mean, the AI doesn't really use First Order super well. They're just a really strong squad. People use them on defense quite a bit, and it's just because First Order are a lot stronger than they appear, and frankly, I really disagree with using them on defense. They're a good team, and they're a decent defensive team. I don't get me wrong, but they can be so much more in the hands of a good player. Like, you can do a lot of things. You can really get them spinning after a while. And even though I wouldn't really consider myself to be like a power user, I'm not part of like the First Order Discord. I do have quite a bit of experience with the team at this point because I use them in almost every single Grand Arena match. Frankly, guys, I would really advise working on First Order. Not only are they going to be relevant in the coming months because of the new movie coming out, they're also just really good in terms of being able to beat B-level teams. The thing that you have to realize is that everyone has meta teams that can take out other meta teams. The difference in Grand Arena is usually going to be in these B teams, being able to take out other B teams efficiently. Everyone's got good teams to be able to take out the good teams. That's part of Grand Arena, and obviously skill and efficiency are all part of all of this equation, but you just need to realize that this team is really good at beating other B teams. First Order can't really counter any A tier or S tier teams, but they can absolutely take out this B level stuff really well. And you can see my protection and health are all pretty high. I decided not to really go for trying to get my First Order officer's protection all the way up just because that could take a while and I wouldn't necessarily even be able to, even if I did try really hard. He relies on getting buffed to be able to, every time he gains a buff, he regains 5% of his protection, and so it was just going to take too long and be too much effort to be able to get that done in time. But I almost made it, actually, but at the end of the day, that wasn't a huge deal. My opponent had already lost a lot of fights, and as long as I could one-shot every team and be able to full clear my opponent, then I would be able to take the win home. And so that zone was able to fall, and all I had left was a Nute squad with Wat and Wampa, Xaereth Rebel Pathfinder. There's a lot of really annoying characters in this squad, and Traya is kind of built to be able to endure that frustration, and so I didn't worry about taking an undersized squad or anything. I'd already gotten that feat done in the last episode, actually, so I just wanted to be able to get the win here, and really at this point, no matter what, if I was able to clear this, I was going to beat my opponent. Even if they were able to full clear me back at some point, I was going to get the win here. So first I wanted to put Isolate onto Xaereth Rebel Pathfinder because every time he would just be constantly taunting and annoying me because of the Wat buff to him. Wat gives him a permanent taunt, and so I decided I would just take him out of the equation entirely, and just deal with him later. After that, I wasn't really sure who I wanted to fracture. In the end, Dooku already had one of the fancy techs, and I just didn't want to have to deal with that, essentially. Watt and Nute posed more of a threat, and so did Wampa. Wampa I was just kind of ignoring, which maybe that wasn't wise, but I just decided I needed to focus on these other guys first. And you can see here I did pay the extortion thing for Nute. I've seen too many videos lately where people just keep ignoring it, and then Nute just eats them alive. That is absolutely a threat. When you face Nute, is he keeps extorting people. He has a ton of turns. He keeps doing it and keeps doing it, and you're also losing a lot of turns. I realize it's a frustrating fact, but Nute is going to be able to just completely destroy your team if he keeps extorting you and you don't do something about it. And so in the end, I decided I'd just annihilate Nute, even though other guys can do more damage in the short term, being able to hit hard and everything. And Wampa was kind of starting to ramp up some of his damage and everything, which isn't something you want. You can actually just daze him and everything kind of works itself out. And so I had daze on Nute, I had daze on Wampa. Wampa eventually got taken out, and I was making some fairly good progress here. At this point, I knew I was going to win. The clock was starting to kind of wind down, but I still had over half of it, and only 2 characters left, and neither of these characters had a high degree of damage that they could do. This wasn't a high relic Dooku or something, which is kind of scary on his own. It was just a pretty average Dooku, and so even with the Zeta, I was able to take him out. And then Scarif Rebel Pathfinder is frustrating to deal with, but if I can't take him out in 2 minutes, then there's probably something wrong. And this actually gave me an opportunity to maybe be able to regrow some of my protection and health. Scarif Rebel Pathfinder can be a frustrating dude to try to take out. But in this case, 58 banners against this Nute team, that was a fantastic result. I think a lot of it had to do with Malak just being awesome, but I was able to full clear my opponent. And even though it wasn't the most efficient win, you can see 1895 is not that great. I was still pretty happy. I had won my 10th match.
Victory!
So I did change up my defenses a little bit, and I wanted to kind of walk you guys through what I was doing. I did put Nightsisters up front, and they got 1 shot for 60, so maybe that wasn't the wisest choice. My biggest changes were in this zone here on the bottom front. And you can see that I replaced Jango in my Bounty Hunter squad with Watt, and Watt just gives an undispellable taunt to Bosk, and it forces my opponent to take him out before he takes anyone else out. In exchange, I put Jango into the Nute squad and Wampa and Baze, so it's kind of a misfits team, but it apparently did its job this time. In the top back zone, I have my Grievous team with BB-8, and I hope that my BB-8 was the reason that they failed, but my opponent failed enough attacks that I really just don't know if that was a reliable defense or not. And then my Qi'ra team has Nest on it again, has 1 defense, and my opponent had said that they were going to tell me what teams they used to be able to counter my stuff, and I was excited to hear about it, and then they said that anything that went wrong did go wrong, and then they didn't answer anything else. They didn't talk to me for the rest of the match, including all the next day. So as it stood, I was able to take a win. I'm that much closer to Kyber. I think that as long as I can get a full clear, even if I lose my next 2 matches, if I get a full clear on both, then I'll be able to make it into Kyber, which is great. It's great to have that kind of monkey off my back, or whatever you want to say. And I don't know why I use that metaphor, because I hate monkeys. But otherwise, I'm really excited. I probably made it into Kyber 1 more time, and of course, I want to be able to see how far into Kyber I can get, so stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.